Howdy, howdy. Sea Devil here, and welcome to our second set of tests in a little series looking at Dowie infantry versus Cav, or Dowie anti-Cav infantry, specifically looking at miners, dwarf warriors with great weapons, longbeards with great weapons, slayers, and giant slayers. Now, I had a question in one of the comments, or a bit of a discussion saying, aren't just regular longbeards always going to be a good choice? And in fact, might they not be a better choice than longbeards with great weapons and these other units in most cases? And the answer is just regular longbeards are just amazing. They are just a fantastic all-around unit, and anyone who watches my channel knows they are my favorite unit in the game. And there's good reason why. They're old like I am, they're grumbly like I am, they're slow like I am, they groan when they get up off of chairs just like I do. These are reasons why I love longbeards. And they also perform. They're very, very steady on the battlefield. So I'm going to start adding regular longbeards into the test, so I have a bit of a anchor, a pivot point, a reference point to other testing that I've done, just out of curiosity and to see where they line up. So I will go through the testing that I'm going to do with the Squigs. So the Squig herd is really anti-infantry, armor piercing. How is this lineup going to do against the Squigs? And we know how they did against the Empire Knights, which are shock cavalry, which don't have a lot of armor but do have a lot of charge bonus, don't have armor piercing. So before we get started on that though, I wanted to just go and show, I did do the test with the longbeards with great, or just the regular longbeards against the Empire Knights, and I wanted to show them. So there's going to be a lot of testing and a lot of spreadsheet work in this. I will go over the analysis and how I do it. For those of you who don't like analysis, I know this is not for everyone. Skip to the end of the video and I will try to summarize it. I don't always summarize it wonderfully, but I'll do my best to summarize it near the end of the video. For those of you who love spreadsheet work, we're going to get going. So I'm going to flip over to the spreadsheet right now and just look at how our longbeards lined up in that fight with the Empire Knights. So anyone who doesn't know, basically I look at the cost of the longbeards at 650 versus the Empire Knights at 850. I take the start of the battle, I'm measuring 7 battles in general, look at the end of the battle and figure out how long did the battle take. In this case it took an average of 231 seconds. I look at the finishing hit points for the longbeards versus their starting hit points, and take that as a ratio against their gold cost, and do the same with the Empire Knights, and then subtract those to find the gold differential. I also look at the DPS, or the damage per second, of both units, and how fast they're getting that gold. And this gold ratio is how much did I have to pay to get that gold difference. So basically what this is showing is, as we know, longbeards are an excellent value, and of course they are an excellent value. The gold differential is 453 gold. They are outstanding in this matchup. They did not take advantage of their charge defense against large in this. They just charged them in. Really where these show up as being a decision to make is that it took 231 seconds to get that 453 gold. So they got it 119 gold per minute. So in way of comparison, a simple dwarf warrior with great weapons pulls 412 gold, not quite as much, and it does it at 119 gold per minute. It does this in 208 seconds. If you have giant slayers, they only pull 212 gold total, but they pull it at 474 gold per minute, which is pretty amazing, and they get the job done in 27 seconds. So basically, from the giant slayers to the longbeards, to your regular longbeards, the regular longbeards pull over twice as much total value in gold, but it takes them 10 times as long to get it. And therein lies the crux. Therein lies the decision-making point. Therein lies how you are going to think about this set of tests. So I wanted to go on and we look at now the miners and all of our other units versus the Squig herd, and to see how they line up. So I'll just show how I set up the battles. I have it on the unit testing fields 100 by 100, and I just have to use any general mod, and I set this test up the very same as I did with the Empire Knights. I want to allow the Squigs one and only one charge against any of the units to make sure that the test stays pretty stable. So again, it's not perfect. I understand it's not perfect. Against a player, you will get multiple charges, you will get cycle charging. There are all kinds of things that happen when you play against a real player, but this is so the test can be consistent and repeatable. So basically, just set it up, let those squigs, there they go, they come in for the charge, and they are going to do a ton of damage incredibly fast. My other miners are going to go out from the side, and we'll just let this play out. And the squigs, they do have a Squigs Go Wild plus 12 leadership and the rampage mechanic, and they are beating the tar out of the first miners they got into, but our second group of miners is definitely supporting them and, you know, doing not too bad. The Squig herd are going to break, the two miners will win, and they do get quite a few kills. So we're going to end that in the battle. Alright, and I will go to the spreadsheet, and we're going to see how did they do. So this is against an armor-piercing cavalry. This is anti-infantry armor-piercing. This is the worst case scenario pretty much for our infantry, because dwarfs have lots of armor. So how did the miners do? Well, they did gain value. They actually, but at only 88.8 gold, so it's way down from these crazy numbers of 200 gold and 400 gold in total value, because the squigs are quite good in that encounter, and they only gained it at 61 gold per minute. So, you know, still a pretty good choice, and a good choice against the squigs. You know, and we're going to see how this all lines up. The average battle, though, only took 88 seconds. Real quick for those miners. I think the miners took, what? In their first battle, 215 seconds against the Empire Knight, so quite a difference, really. So 88 seconds, over nice and quick, relatively speaking, for the miners. Now, do we got the Dwarf Warriors? I know I did grab the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and did the set of tests for them, so I'll just show here so you can see for yourself. Same thing, but I got the test done with one Dwarf Warrior with great weapon, and again I wanted to set the test up so they're always on the same side of victory or defeat, just to make sure the numbers are fairly stable and comparable. Once you have some, like if I ran just a single group of miners, the numbers start to get a little bit weird. So run those Dwarf Warriors, and the Dwarf Warriors get their buns kicked right off the get, and then they do start to come back once their stats really take hold. So you see their stats here. They have an extra 12 melee defense, and they're 4 less melee attack, so really it's 8 stat points that the Dwarf Warriors have as an advantage over the Squig herd, and this is where the Dowie always tend to do well, is in prolonged engagements, and this is no different. You know, they get the job done in 58 minutes, and you know, we'll have about 40% of our health left. We'll see how that ends up for the total amount of tests. Yeah, 32% of their health is what the Dwarf Warriors finished. And one Dwarf Warrior did take longer than 2 miners to get that job done. That's kind of what you'd expect. They took 126 seconds because there is only one unit. They pulled only 58 gold value, so they pulled less value than the miners. They pulled it at 29 gold per minute. Again, this is not the ideal situation for our Dowie. Anti-infantry armor-piercing cavalry is the strongest thing that our Dowie can face. So the next, I went with just the basic Longbeards, and again, I want to put them to this test because I do have so many different tests with Longbeards, just your regular Longbeards, that it is kind of a good pivot unit, a good unit that I've used for a lot of other testing, so you can compare to what you think they're worth, and as particularly looking at them compared to Longbeards with great weapons, miners, this kind of thing. And you know, they take quite a bit of damage off the get, just like our Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, but they're going to come back very fast because they have, you know, 34 extra stat points. As soon as they're into a sustained combat, it's going to work out very well because the Squigs only have 50 armor, so they don't have a whole lot of armor. So even though the Longbeards don't have a lot of weapon strength, their lack of armor piercing isn't going to matter as much. So, you know, they finish with over half health. That's done in a reasonable amount of time. Let's go see exactly how much time that battle took. And we go here, and it is 109 seconds. So the Longbeards actually finished the battle quicker than our Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, but slower than our 2 miners. So 2 miners at 650 compare almost directly to the Longbeards at 650, and the 2 miners got the job done faster. Interestingly, the Longbeards, which is a fantastic unit, only pulled 85 gold against the Squigs, and the miners pulled more at 88.8. And obviously much faster at 61 gold per minute as opposed to 47 gold per minute with the Longbeards. So the next unit to test is the Longbeards with great weapons, and this should be an interesting one because obviously the armor piercing isn't as valuable against the Squigs because they don't have a lot of armor. So we'll see exactly how this plays out in an actual battle when you have these armor piercing units. You can see that the gold differential is so much different than compared to the Empire Knights. And obviously we have other units to test, but we'll get our Longbeards with great weapons in there. And they take a ton of damage right off the get-go because they don't have nearly as high a melee defense, and we're not using their charge defense against large. They have 24 stat point advantage against the Squig herds. They do very quickly go into a, you know, we're winning this combat state. We know our regular Longbeards did have more than half their health, and these guys again have more than half their health, but they cost a little bit more. So no problem with the Longbeards, but the Squigs did get 13 kills in there. So let's just end out that battle, and then we'll go and look at the spreadsheet to see how the Longbeards with great weapons did. Alright, so pull down there, and as you would expect, the Longbeards with great weapons finished that fight off in 72 seconds, much faster than the Longbeards, faster than the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and faster than the 2 groups of miners. So 72 seconds, fastest of all so far. They only pulled 13 total gold though, at 12 gold per minute. So they were actually pulling a lot less value than our regular Longbeards, our Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and especially our 2 miners, which are still at the top of the list. 88 total gold pulled against those dirty Squigs. So this is not a negative, right? Like the Longbeards still do pull positive value. So I mean, if they had nothing but Squigs and you had nothing but Longbeards with great weapons pulling 13 gold per encounter, you're going to win that in an online battle. So relatively quick at 72 seconds, and they're pulling 13 total gold. So the next unit, how did our Slayers do? So our Slayers should actually do pretty good because, again, Squigs just don't have a lot of armor. They only have 50 armor. So our regular Slayers should do pretty reasonably because they have a lot of weapon strength, but they don't have that armor piercing. How do they do against the Squig herd when we put them up against them is really the question. And the Squig herds are the Squigs. Armor piercing doesn't matter against the Slayers, right? So we'll put them up against them, and we'll get that fight going. And the fight is over. So, yeah. They absolutely demolished that Squig herd. So let's go see exactly how long that took. This was a bit of a tricky one to test because I couldn't run them all on fast forward to get to the timing. So the Slayers did very, very good. The average fight took 16 seconds. God, Slayers kill so fast. 16 seconds to kill those Squigs. And they did actually decently on gold. They won 43 gold. So more than the Longbeards with great weapons, less than the Longbeards, the regular Longbeards, about, well, less, quite a bit less than 50% less than the, or 25% less than the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and a lot less than the 2 miners. They only pulled a total of 43 gold, but they pulled it at 160 gold per minute because they killed them so fast. This is a fantastic matchup for the Slayers, but you know, the total value they pull, not that impressive. And even miners are beating them. See, this is kind of the longer bit of testing where we're looking at miners for these other roles, and I love that paradigm shift. I mean, this is the miners, Dwarf Warriors with great weapons and Longbeards with great weapons are the Dowie version of cheap spears and halberds. You know, armor-piercing halberds. It's showing to be true. So the last unit we want to look at is Slayers with great weapons. So we know the Slayers with great weapons absolutely murdered the Empire Knights. Killed them very, very quickly. In 1/10 the time of our Longbeards. So how are they going to do against these Squigs? Alright, let's get them in there. And they have a bonus, like they're coming with 80 melee attack against Squigs. Squigs are a large unit, even though they're smaller than most large units. Let's get in there and be prepared to stop the fight. Maybe I'll let this go real time, just for fun. So yeah, a few of our Dwarf Warriors are getting knocked over, but they're just absolutely melting the Squig herd. And boom. So 40 seconds, even faster. So let's go take a look at what they did. Now look at the health, though, that those Squig herds took off our Giant Slayers. A whole hell of a lot. So we'll go take a look at what it did. So they actually, the Giant Slayers, killed them slightly faster, 15 seconds instead of 16 seconds. But here is the story of this test. The Squigs took 105 gold off of our Giant Slayers. They took off a lot of health, so they ended up taking 105 gold away. And they took it at 415 gold per minute. Like, these are the kind of numbers on our last test. This tells us, yeah, the Giant Slayers killed them in 15 seconds, but the Giant Slayers lost 34% of their health to do it against a unit that is, you know, basically 1/3 the cost. You know, 36% of the cost, or whatever it is. You know, it's pretty impressive, these Squig herds. And the Giant Slayers are actually a pretty poor choice against the Squig herd. And it turns out that I never ever thought I would say this in any scenario ever, in any type of testing that I've ever done, is the lowly basic miner is the most valuable unit in this entire test. It's pretty amazing if you think about it. Our Giant Slayers lost 106 gold. Our regular Slayers won only 44 gold. Our Longbeards with great weapons won 13 gold. Our Longbeards won only 85 gold, which is pretty good. And our Dwarf Warriors with great weapons won 59 gold. And our miners came in and won 89 gold, 88.8 gold. So they won the most gold. They are the most valuable unit in this test, which is fantastic. Again, something I never ever thought I would say, because, you know, like, I've done all the testing with the miners and they perform so poorly against infantry. But they are just killing it against Cav. They're doing fantastic. I am just, Captain Beardy, thank you for your comments. You know, I love this. And, you know, there is strength in numbers, and you do need numbers, obviously, and but I am just loving what these miners are doing. And, you know, in your backline, the reason I really like this combo, again, of a one miner and one Longbeard on each edge, is that our Longbeard with great weapons, is that the Longbeards with great weapons have that encouragement, and they have immune to psychology, so they can encourage the miners to help their leadership. They're going to get an extra 5 leadership, I think, is 5 leadership. And they do have the charge defense against large if it's needed, and immune to psychology in case there's some kind of crazy fear, terror bombing monster around, as opposed to Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. But Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, again, they perform pretty well in there. So, you know, if you wanted a backline with just 4 Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, that's going to be your anti-cav contingent. Not awful. You know, if you want to go super cheap, and, you know, here's the thing with miners, they are so cheap. If you know you're going to get a lot of cav, you know, and you know maybe you'll get a lot of large single entities, you could load up with 4 miners on each edge, you know, and it's not that expensive, right? You're only looking at 2,400, right? Or 2,600, I guess. It's not that bad. You know, 2,600 gold, and you have 8 units in your backline to defend against cav. Like, you know, you think, how well are you going to actually be able to, you're going to be able to use, like, you know, your Goblobber and maybe 2 bolt throwers, and you have a couple of rangers back there, and then who are you going to put in your front line? Again, you could put, you know, your Ungram, which is just your cheap, your very inexpensive version of Ungram, and then you just need a front line of some sort. You know, you can get just your regular Longbeards, and, you know, 3,500 left. Maybe I can get a couple of Iron Breakers, right? And 1 unit of armor piercing in the hammers, and there's my army. Like, you can make some nice armies with miners as your backline defense. You know, this would be, you know, this isn't a bad army if you are expecting to see cav, because your bolt throwers are going to be able to go to work, and it's going to be hard for anything to get to your back line through 8 miners, right? It'd be really, really difficult. That's a lot of units. You know, even if they don't kill anything, they tarp pit things up. But the beauty of these is you have 2 units of cav come back. You send these 2 miners after one, these 2 after another, and you still have 4 miners sitting back there to defend. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. And you know, I love the concept of how do I build my back line, because if you do, you know, say you have the same idea, but you really want a super heavy hitting back line, you know, you can give yourself Giant Slayers and your Dragonback Slayers, and, you know, rank up your Longbeards a little bit, maybe see if you can get Ungram an ability or 2, something like that. It's really 113, 158, yeah, but you know what I mean. Basically, you have the ability to change your philosophy, where your backline is going to be these 2 Slayers, and they're going to kill things really fast. You know, it's really, really interesting. I'm absolutely loving this testing. I'm really proud of the miners. Great job, boys. You won one. Like, I just want to give you a little pat on your wax candle noggins. Good job, boys. I love it. Very, very happy to see the miners finish on top, to be the quote-unquote best unit in this test. Really the unit that pulled the most value in this test and the way that I've tested. Again, this is not all the testing. I've got lots more to do, and it's a very specific test with no cycle charging and all these things. But, you know, it just turns out that the miners are the best. Second best was our Longbeards. Then our second best was our Longbeards. Then was our Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, I think, and then our Slayers for total value, then our Longbeards, and then at negative value was our Giant Slayers. Very poor in this cheap matchup against the Squig Herd. Squig Herd pulled a ton of value against our Giant Slayers, so really interesting matchup there. And you know, I think I could see miners being pretty useful in this matchup, because you do often see Squigs. They are a very good unit, and, you know, even not just the Squig Herd, but you also see, what are those poison ones? The Night Goblin Squig Hoppers. You know, They got Vanguard deployment. They can. They are immune to psychology. They do have poison, and they are armor piercing and anti-infantry. You know, they're a pretty good little unit for their cost. Boar big guns. You know, no boar boys. You might see a chariot. I do see some chariot, but again, I will do the testing on the chariots. I have decided against the Bretonnian unit, so I've got basically 3 more cavalry tests to do with this set of units to get the full set of data. The units I was going to use was the Bretonnian Cav. I wanted to use, where are they? These questing knights. 48 armor piercing, anti-infantry. But they only have 80 armor. I mean, they're a good unit. I think I found a better unit to use, and I'm going to use the Lizardmen. And the reason I'm going to use the Lizardmen is because they have here the Cold One Riders. And the Cold One Riders have 90 armor. So I would like that to be over 100 or 100-ish to maximize the effect of the armor piercing, to see how that is. But they have 44 armor piercing, 42 charge bonus. They do cause fear. They're a very interesting unit. And I think will be a good unit to test. They don't rampage or anything like that. So I think that's going to be the next one. And I am, of course, going to go to the Warriors of Chaos to test the 2 chariots. I will test the base Chaos Chariot and the Gorby's Chariot, because the base Chariot has an excellent charge bonus but no armor piercing, or very little armor piercing, and they are anti-infantry. And the Gorby's has armor piercing, anti-infantry, and an even better charge bonus. So, and they do cause fear. So I think those will be the 2 chariot pieces. So those are the tests that are coming. Again, just to summarize, first win for the Miners. Love it. The first time they've ever come in first in any of my tests ever. This is a pretty monumental occasion in my well, I guess it's May of 2016. So May, June, July, August, September. Almost 2.5 years of testing. First time the Miners have come in. Top dog. Love it, boys. And, you know, the other units, there's no other bad unit. There's no bad units in that bunch with the exception of the Giant Slayers. You know, and the Giant Slayers might just be a bad unit for a matchup against the Greenskins anyways. Because you think the Greenskins are a kind of a rough, because you're going to see Goblin Archers, you're going to see you know, these kind of units that don't have a lot of armor piercing that are going to be devastating against your Slayers. And I have, like, you'll see like the Forest Goblin Spider Riders, or even Goblin Wolf Rider Archers, and they're specifically intended to help pick off Slayers. So you know, Slayers in general are probably just not a great unit against the Greenskin matchup. But anyways, love to hear from you. Especially anyone who's watched my channel for a long time and seen how many tests the Miners have failed. And is as happy as I am to see them win one against some pretty big hitters, right? Remember, these Squigs, they are a large unit. You know, this is a unit of large entities. The Miners were going up against Giant Slayers and Slayers, you know, and Longbeards, my favorite unit of the game, the most, you know, one of the pound for pound best units in the entire game, against Longbeards with great weapons, Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and they won. Good job, boys. Anyways, with that said, I hope to hear some comments. I always love comments. They always make this so much more interesting for me. And, you know, I will see you soon.